Hi, you're watching Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone, and today I want to talk about what for me was one of the highlights of the Star Wars celebration. Now, I didn't attend. I have watched snippets of it from the live streams and the various videos that have been put online. And no, the highlight was not the teaser trailer for Episode 9, the rehash of Skywalker. For me, the highlight was the panel for The Mandalorian. Now, I watched this whole panel, and I have to say that I am now excited about the prospect of what is in the offing here, what's on the table, and what is being proposed. Let me tell you where I started with The Mandalorian, and those who've been watching my channel will know this already. I was skeptical. I was highly skeptical. When I first heard about the concept of The Mandalorian, that they were going to make a live-action TV series based on The Mandalorian, my first thought was, what the heck is this? This just seems to me like nothing more than Disney strip mining bits and pieces, the wildest things they can from the original trilogy, from the franchise, in order to make some more of that Disney bullion. That's what I thought it was. It was just, I was very skeptical, and I thought this was nothing more than just a basic cynical sort of cash grab. But my mind has now been completely changed based on the panel for The Mandalorian that I watched. I watched all, about 45, 46 minutes of it from the Star Wars celebration. This was very different to anything else, I think, that I saw over that weekend at that convention. It's a very different and new tone. And in fact, it sounds really, really promising. Let me explain what I mean. So first of all, we had the creative brains behind this new project who were heading the panel, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. And what's exciting about this is these are two guys who have been immersed in Star Wars. Now, I knew about Dave Filoni and his time under George Lucas in particular, and this is a guy who did his apprenticeship, did his time, and learnt his trade under Lucas. And for all of his faults, there's no doubting that Lucas is the creative genius who gave us Star Wars at its pinnacle. It's not Disney who's done that. Disney has trended in the opposite direction. And so Dave Filoni is a guy who did his time, did his trade under Lucas, and he knows so much about Star Wars. Jon Favreau, I didn't realize just how immersed and how much of a passionate Star Wars fan Jon Favreau was. And it was so clear watching this panel that he has a huge love for the old trilogy. In fact, he was very specific about that was his particular Star Wars, and that was the thing that really mattered to him most. In fact, there's an interesting dynamic here with The Mandalorian. You have Dave Filoni, who's really the sort of steeped in the prequels. That's his sort of Star Wars. And then you have Favreau, who's the old trilogy, and the two of them coming together. I think there's a real potential for some great synergy here. The relationship between the two of these guys on the panel was something special. There was a real enthusiasm from both of them, I felt, and a great chemistry, more importantly, between the two of them. This didn't feel fake. And I have to say this because so many other panels of this kind, or PR junkets where you have actors and producers and directors and creative people and others who go around fronting the media, trying to promote their project, whether it's a film or a TV series, so much of it just feels like absolute fakery. It's just hollow, vacuous. It's just charlatans who are there to try and line the coffers of the project that they've just been involved with. So they'll say anything. They just sort of spit out PR talking points, and you don't really get a sense that there's much beyond those PR talking points invested in this for them. This panel was not like that. It was the complete opposite. You really got a sense, I'll talk more about this in a minute, but basically these guys are clearly passionate about Star Wars, and they are passionate about this project. It really means something to them. Again, I'll explain more in just a second and give you some examples of why I'm saying that. One of the things that I was really excited about that they said very early on in the panel was that they had deliberately focused on, with the Mandalorian TV series, making a return to the samurai films and the westerns, the spaghetti western type stuff, the original material that was so influential on George Lucas and the old trilogy, and they made a deliberate and conscious return to that sort of style. It's very much homage, just like the original trilogy was. And so I think that's really exciting. This is not guys who are trying to make this Star Wars into some new artsy political thing. They're trying to be faithful to the original source material, to the point where the lead actor, Pedro Pascal, was told that he should go and watch these samurai and spaghetti western films to get himself immersed in that sort of world to prepare for this role. The other thing that's exciting about The Mandalorian is there is some great acting talent involved in this. You've got Pedro Pascal, who I've already mentioned, who is in the lead role, and clearly this guy loves like Star Wars. He loved being on that panel. He loved playing this role. What's interesting is I didn't realize this until I heard him say it on the panel was he's the same age as I am. We were born the same year. And so this is a guy, again, who is steeped in old Star Wars, the old original trilogy, and he has a great love of it. And it exuded from his pores, everything he said. He's clearly over the moon, like a delighted child about the fact that he was able to play this role. And to me, that's good, that's exciting. It speaks to a bigger passion. This is not just a job. Well, it certainly didn't seem that way. Either that, or he is one of the best actors out there, and he was acting the whole time, because clearly this didn't appear to be a job for him. Gina Carano, who is playing Cara Dune. Now, this is interesting because when I saw the original stills for her character, I was like, I wonder what this character is. They didn't really go into great detail. They don't want to spoil a lot. But apparently she's an ex-rebel trooper, a shock trooper, who is having trouble reintegrating back into this new world where they're no longer at war. Because remember, this series takes place after Return of the Jedi. And so this is a period where the Empire's reign has come to an end. Their rule is over, but it's a very uneasy period in the galaxy. And I thought that having someone who's an ex-rebel in there, who's used to being involved in the war and now doesn't know what to do with herself, that's a great concept. That, to me, is a great creative starting point for a character. There's so much that's interesting that you can do with that character. And then, of course, on the panel, rounding out the panel on the acting front, we had Carl Weathers, who's playing Grief Karga, or I'm not sure whether it's Grief Karga or Grief Marga, because there were two different... Jon Favreau pronounced it, I believe, as Grief Karga, the character name, but Carl Weathers was talking about Grief Marga. So I'm not sure which is the correct one. But the point is that he is the head of a guild of bounty hunters, and Carl Weathers, again, clearly very excited about being able to be part of this project. Werner Herzog is also in this, the great director who pops up in films from time to time. And to me, it makes a lot of sense to have him, actually. Again, that's consistent with old Star Wars. Think about the original trilogy. Think about Grand Moff Tarkin. You go back to sort of some of the older established, the royalty, if you like, of the acting world, men and women from a bygone era, and you sort of just give them parts. So Alec Guinness was another one. You give them these sort of pivotal roles here, and that's what Star Wars is. It has a particular feel and a particular vibe, and it seems that putting Werner Herzog in there is consistent with that. It just has a feel that is consistent with the original trilogy. And then, of course, they've got different directors, and one of them who's involved is Taika Waititi, so fellow Kiwi, and Taika Waititi. It's going to be interesting to see whether Taika Waititi is going to bring his typical sensibility to this, or whether it's going to be a bit more muted. Because if he brings his typical sensibility, there's no doubt that this, or there could be the episodes that he's directed anyway, will probably, I would imagine, have more of a Firefly type, Joss Whedon type feel to them. There will be a bit more of that humour, that sardonic wit and things like that happening in the episodes, which I'm totally fine with. I think that's good. And so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But the point is they've got some really good and very, very talented people who are involved with the production of this TV series. Then there's the actual story concept that this TV series is built around. Now, like I said, when I first heard about The Mandalorian, I was highly skeptical. I thought this is Disney just strip mining a franchise for the sake of money. But it turns out, after watching this panel, I was completely wrong. That's not what's going on here at all. And secondly, the concept itself is actually a lot more solid and a lot more meaningful than what I had imagined it could have actually been. So what this story focuses on is basically the fall of order in the galaxy. So as I said, it's after Return of the Jedi. It's the end of the Empire's rule and control, and now you have this uneasy period between two regimes where you have order that has dissipated, you have chaos, and you have basically the strong who are taking advantage of the weak. And to me, there's so much potential in that, and it is also a new take on Star Wars, while at the same time, based on everything I've heard from this panel discussion, that is going to be steeped in and very faithful to what Star Wars is, that offers a lot of potential opportunities. You don't just have to rehash stories. There's something new here. There's something interesting that you can do here. It's not just about one family, and it's not just rehashing the typical Star Wars type stories and tropes. You can actually do something a little bit creative and new here while being faithful to the source material. The visuals that they showed in that teaser, there were two different teasers that were shown. The visuals that they showed were, I think, just phenomenal. Even the behind the scenes, they had another behind the scenes bit of footage as well. I'll talk about that in just a second. Even that was captivating and looked really, really good. So the visuals they had from the show, they look awesome. The behind the scenes footage, the I guess you'd call it the teaser material, it looks exciting. It actually looks like something I want to invest time in watching. It looks like something that's going to have concrete mythology. Now, looks can be deceiving, I get it, but I think there's a lot of really positive signs here. So let's talk about some of the specific stuff on the panel that I think is worth a special mention. First of all, watching this panel, it's about 45 minutes long. I'll post a link in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. There was not a hint of politics at all, and it was so refreshing. There was no one sitting there talking about empowerment and smashing the glass ceiling and a new and different way of doing it. It was just people talking about a passionate love of this great mythology and how they're excited to be part of it. And I thought that was so refreshing right from the get-go. And then you have moments like Jon Favreau, and let me quote him here, who said this: "The primary prerequisite for directors on this show, The Mandalorian, was that they had to be a fan of Star Wars." That's important, because this is not people taking Star Wars and then producing it in their own image. This is people trying to be faithful. He also said this: "If you've been a fan, there has been a lot of care that has gone into all of the details." And like I said, they talked about even to the point of immersing themselves in those old samurai and spaghetti western films that were very influential for Lucas in order to get the feel and the tone of what's going on here right with this series. The behind the scenes footage of the miniatures, in particular, all the behind the scenes footage was interesting, but for me, the most exciting thing I saw was the behind the scenes footage of the miniatures and the motion control capture rigs, and they put that on screen, and Dave Filoni talked to that a little bit, and that looks exciting. And this is something for me, when they were talking about what's going to be going on here, I thought, holy moly, they really have put a lot into this. So they talked about Hal Hickel, who is involved in this, in the motion capture, the miniatures and that side of the effects. And they talked about the fact that he spent time researching all three of the old trilogy films to map out exactly the flight paths that they used in the original films for their motion capture, so they could incorporate them into their series. The star mapping and everything, again, so they could have this consistency and faithfulness to what has gone before. Now, when I heard things like that, I got to admit, I got real excited about that, because to me, that is a care and an attention to detail to what this mythology is and how it was crafted, what the original vision was, that has been sorely lacking from Star Wars. This is not just someone like J.J. Abrams saying, hey, don't worry, folks, we've gone back to real sets and practical models. This is something even more focused and committed. This is fans who are making something that they are passionate about. And speaking of passion, it turns out that this isn't really a Disney Star Wars production. That's what I thought initially that it was when it was first announced. It turns out that this is actually Jon Favreau's personal passion project, and that is a really, really good thing. He explained at one point on that panel discussion that he had 4 whole episodes written before he even pitched the concept to Disney, to Lucasfilm, to the new regime at Star Wars. He had 4 whole episodes written, and he explicitly stated, I would rather write it and them not buy it. So this is about artistic integrity. This is a passion project. This is not something where Disney said, right, this is what we want, now go and find the people to make it happen. This is Jon Favreau, an old school Star Wars fan who is steeped in the mythology, who's so passionate about it, he wants to do his own project, that he actually writes the project. And he doesn't just write a concept and say, here's my concept, and then allow them to sort of interfere, if you like, with the creative process. He actually creates 4 episodes and then goes to them and says, this is what I want to do. You need to give me the money to do this. And if they say no, he's willing to walk away. Now that's what you need. That's exactly what Star Wars has been lacking, I would argue, and that's what's needed in this situation. You don't just need people who are looking at this as just another job or an opportunity to advance their careers, or people who are just going to slot themselves into the studio machine and do whatever they're told. You need people who have that level of artistic integrity and commitment to the cause. Jon Favreau also talked, and I think this is worth a special mention, about the fact that he was influenced in a big way by Joseph Campbell and his take on mythology. Now that's important because Joseph Campbell was a huge influence on Lucas, as every diehard Star Wars fan knows. And so he talks specifically about how that was a huge influence on him as well, the whole hero's journey. I hope you can see now why I'm really excited about The Mandalorian and why I have completely changed my tune on this. And it seems to me that after watching this panel, there now appears to be an interesting development taking place within the new Disney-controlled Star Wars. It seems to me that you basically have 2 very different approaches now when it comes to the creativity of Star Wars going on here. There are 2 different streams, and after this panel I'm convinced of this, and it's this panel that's really, I guess, alerted me to this fact. On the one side you have the Johnsons and the Abrams of this world who are making effectively a product and reshaping that product in their own image, or taking existing ideas and just sort of plagiarizing them and repeating them without a lot of care and concern. And then on the other side, you have Favreau and Filoni. And these guys clearly love the mythology, they are passionate about it, and they are committed to being faithful to that. And these are 2 very different approaches, and sooner or later, if I'm correct in my predictions, I would say that these 2 approaches are going to butt up against each other if they haven't already done so. But I think as time progresses, what will happen is, what will win the day is not the kind of material that has been churned out, like the new trilogy type stuff. If they just keep churning that out, Star Wars will die. But if they make a return to a more faithful adaptation of that mythology and a faithful retelling or re-engagement, more likely, with that mythology, then they will actually succeed. And what will become apparent as time progresses is that is the more popular way to do things, that is the better way to do things, and it will be ultimately the more lucrative way to do things, because people are naturally drawn to things that are good, true, and beautiful. Not rubbish, not political hackery. They are drawn to things that are good, true, and beautiful. And the original trilogy, for all its faults, no one's saying it's perfect, but for all its faults, it was just such a great example of a good, true, and beautiful mythology that was presented to us, and people resonated with it. That's why it was so popular. What we're being served up lately is just political hackery, it's plagiarism, it's rehashing. It lacks that sort of faithfulness to what the original Star Wars was. And if this new creative strand that clearly is emerging now under Favreau and Filoni, if that is allowed to grow, then I think Star Wars will ultimately succeed, and that will be the way out of the quagmire, the mess that we are currently in. At the end of this panel, basically I found myself asking, why the heck were Favreau and Filoni not given the new trilogy? It's almost heartbreaking to think about, because you can just see all of the lost potential. Imagine what could have been And I am absolutely confident that it would have been wildly different to the dross that we've been served up. And it's just a real shame in my mind that we missed out on that. But at the same time, it's a shame that's also tinged with excitement about what lies ahead and the promise of The Mandalorian. This actually looks like actual Star Wars mythology. And this looks like a passionate presentation of Star Wars mythology by people who care and actually want to do something good and faithful. Only time will tell. The series might come out and it might be average, who knows. But I tell you what, after watching this panel, all the signs are there that this is actually going to be something worthy of our time. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like the content I'm creating, please financially support the channel. The links for how you can do that are found in the video description below. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Left Foot Media.